Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera to all the students. So topic for today is chapter 7 biology form 4 KSSM. The chapter is about cellular respiration. Okay, production of energy through cellular respiration. Cellular respiration carried out to generate energy needed by all living cells. Cellular respiration is the oxidation process of organic molecules through several stages to relieve energy. So this actually the cellular respiration is to generate energy. So this generation of the energy is a process of oxidation of glucose. The necessity of the metabolic processes you already learned in the last two chapter about the metabolic reaction, which are anabolism and catabolism. For your information, the catabolism process is to release energy, whereas anabolism processes is to use energy. Without energy, metabolism such as metabolic processes such as protein formation, which is a basic muscle substance, will not occur. So meaning to produce protein, which is to form our muscle, through the anabolic processes. Meaning to produce protein, we have to undergo, our cell have to undergo anabolic process. So without these anabolic processes, so we cannot produce protein in our body. So identify the main substrate used in the energy production. So the main substrate of energy cellular respiration is glucose. Okay, without glucose we cannot produce the energy. So chemical found in the glucose is released to produce energy required by cell. So this glucose will release energy, so this energy will be required in the cell. So in human and animal, glucose is obtained through the digestion of carbohydrate from your food eaten. You know that carbohydrate is the source of your energy. So energy will be digested to break down to the simplest form, which is glucose. In green plant, light energy can trap by chlorophyll for photosynthesis process to produce glucose. Meaning, in plant, they are getting the glucose from the production of photosynthesis process. So list the type of cellular respiration. Actually, the cellular respiration, we have two types, is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration is occur in presence of oxygen, whereas anaerobic respiration occur without or absent of oxygen. So in this anaerobic respiration is a fermentation. So actually fermentation is an alternative pathway of obtain energy beside the cellular respiration. So in a fermentation, the breakdown of glucose is incomplete in condition of limited oxygen or without oxygen, meaning fermentation occur with the limited oxygen or without oxygen. Okay, now we go more detail about the aerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration is breakdown of glucose molecule involving oxygen to produce chemical energy. Oxygen is used to oxidize glucose to produce carbon dioxide, water and energy. So aerobic respiration process begins with the glycolysis process. Glycolysis process means the breakdown of glucose by enzyme. But for your information, so to do the aerobic respiration, you need the glucose, right, to produce the energy. So this glucose will oxidize by the oxygen. That's why when you want to when you respire, you are intake the oxygen or inhale the oxygen. Why? The oxygen is used to oxidize the glucose. So this glucose will produce energy, carbon dioxide, water, and water. Okay. First stage for the anaerobic respiration is from the glycolysis. So glycolysis is the process to break down the glucose by enzyme. So this process occurs in the cytoplasm. So one glucose molecule is break down into two pyruvate molecules. So in the cytoplasm, the glycolysis will occur to break down the glucose into the two molecules of pyruvate. So then the following process occur in the mitochondrion. Pyruvate produced by the glycolysis is then oxidized through a series of reactions to produce carbon dioxide, water and energy. Meaning after the pyruvate is produced in the glycolysis process, it will be transported into the mitochondrion. So in this mitochondrion, pyruvate then will be oxidized to produce carbon dioxide, water and energy. So a large amount of energy is used to produce adenosine triphosphate or ATP, or the other we known as the ATP molecule. So meaning in this aerobic respiration we will produce a large amount of ATP ATP molecule. So we can conclude these stages of the aerobic respiration. The first stages is a glycolysis process, where it occurs in the cytoplasm when this glucose molecule will break down into pyruvate. Then this pyruvate will be exported to the mitochondrion. So in this mitochondrion, oxidation of pyruvate occurs to produce carbon dioxide, water and the energy. Okay. Conceptual energy produced from glucose during aerobic respiration. So this is the complete process of glucose oxidation. In this is simplified as below. So glucose plus oxygen in presence of oxygen, aerobic respiration. Okay, glucose plus oxygen. So the product is carbon dioxide plus water plus energy, which is 2,898 kilojoule of energy. Okay, aerobic respiration is, we also can simplify. So this ATP. Okay, you look at the ATP. So ATP molecule are produced when a group of non-organic phosphate is added to the adenosine diphosphate or DAP. D mean adenosine. Okay. Di meaning two. P is phosphate. So adenosine diphosphate, that means adenosine with two phosphate plus another molecule of phosphate, it will absorb energy and it will form ATP molecule. So this ATP molecule will have weak phosphate link. So meaning the link between these three phosphate is very weak. So when the phosphate link on ATP molecule are breakdown, the energy release is supplied to cell to help us carry out our daily activity. So this ATP which are containing the energy will break down. One of the phosphate will break down, so it will release energy. So the product is ADP, back to the ADP, and plus another phosphate. So it will turn back, or it will continue the cycle. Okay. Okay, so to study the experiment about the aerobic respiration, you have to read it and study this experiment and try to remember in your textbook. Okay, I'm not to explain it. You can read it, and we will do the experiment. So now we go for the fermentation. Fermentation is an incomplete breakdown of glucose in condition of limited energy or without oxygen. Limited oxygen or without oxygen. Meaning the fermentation is the incomplete breakdown. Fermentation is different from the aerobic respiration. in its metabolic pathway after the glycolysis. Meaning before fermentation, they also are having the glycolysis stage, which this more glucose will be break down into two molecules of pyruvate. So after glycolysis, the pyruvate products will undergo either alcohol fermentation or lactic acid fermentation. So in this fermentation, you can see the product is either glucose or ethanol or lactic acid. Okay, so this is the for the glucose. You can see the glucose will be break down into the ethanol plus carbon dioxide and energy, which is 201 kilojoule of energy in the yeast fermentation. Okay, for yeast fermentation. So yeast fermentation, ethanol is used in the making of beer and wine. So we are using yeast to making beer and wine, and to rise up the dough, right? We use the release of carbon dioxide break those rice. Okay, in paddy plant that grow in the waterlogged area with less oxygen are able to carry out alcohol fermentation. Ethanol produced in the tissue during the fermentation process is toxic to most of the plant, but the cell of paddy plant have the higher tolerance of ethanol compared to other species. Why? Why this paddy plant able to tolerate with the accumulation of ethanol? Because the paddy plant produce plenty of alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme. So that means paddy plant have enzyme dehydrogenase enzyme that can break down ethanol molecule into non-toxic carbon dioxide. So to answer to answer this question, why paddy plant able to grow in waterlogged area even though they have a lot of accumulation of ethanol? Because in paddy plant they have dehydrogenase enzyme which is able to break down the ethanol into non-toxic carbon dioxide. Lactic acid fermentation. The breakdown of glucose into lactic acid fermentation. So glucose will be break down into lactic acid and energy. So in this lactic acid, it's only produce 150 kilojoule of ATP. In lactose bacillus, so this is in the milk. Lactose means susu, milk, bacillus is bacteria. The bacteria lactose bacillus carry out milk fermentation to produce yogurt. Lactose bacillus add on the lactose or milk sugar and turn it into lactic acid. So this lactic acid will then coagulate casein or milk protein to produce yogurt. Lactic acid is the source of the sour taste of yogurt. So how to make yogurt? You just add lactose bacillus into the milk. So this lactose bacillus will coagulate the protein in milk, so it will produce yogurt. So the sour taste of yogurt is the lactic acid. Okay, lactic acid fermentation in human muscle cell. So during the vigorous training, the rate of oxygen is used instead of oxygen supply by the body circulatory system. Meaning, when you do the vigorous activity, you are lack of oxygen. Okay. So the muscle in an oxygen deficiency state, it is said to undergo oxygen debt. Meaning when you use a lot of oxygen, you lack oxygen, so your cell will undergo oxygen debt. Oxygen cannot break down completely. Sorry, it's not oxygen. Glucose, when the absence of oxygen, the glucose cannot break down completely. So This cell will use fermentation. So each glucose molecule is breakdown into 2 ATP molecule or 150 kilojoule energy will be produced. So you can see one molecule of glucose it only produce 150 kilojoule energy in the lactic acid fermentation in human muscle cell. So the products of lactic acid accumulation can cause fatigue or muscle cramp. So some of you had experienced, right, the muscle cramp because you do the activity. So this is because the accumulation of lactic acid inside your muscle. So when the vigorous activity stops, the intake of excess oxygen will oxidize the lactic acid into carbon dioxide, water and energy. So when you stop do the activity, so you will keep on inhale in the faster rate. So this one actually to intake more oxygen. So this oxygen used to oxidize the lactic acid, to counteract the lactic acid, to convert it to break down it into carbon dioxide, water and energy. Then all the lactic acid will be expelled. Then you call it, this situation we call as the oxygen depth is a repeat. Okay, a lack of oxygen in muscle and oxygen depth is repeat. So what happened? So this is the diagram or graph shows how you the oxygen depth is repeat. So at the beginning of oxygen, you can see the oxygen intake of your cell is more. The oxygen intake of the cell is more, but the oxygen intake from outside is less. So a lot of use oxygen in the at the beginning of exercise. But when you stop do the exercise, the intake of oxygen in your cell is less. So you intake of the oxygen for your from the outside, from the environment is more. So you were able to recover, that we call it as a oxygen depth is repeat. Okay, the write and explain word question. So this is you have to remember. So we have two word equation that you have to remember. For the glucose, for the lactic fermentation, so you have from the glucose without oxygen to the form is a lactic acid plus energy. For the ethanol, you have glucose, ethanol plus carbon dioxide, energy and 200 kilojoule. For the lactic acid fermentation, the number of energy is 150 kilojoule. So girl, this is the experiment also inside your textbook. I hope you will study it and try to remember it. In case there is the experiment, we have time, we will do the exercise, the experiment. Compare and contrast between the aerobic respiration and fermentation. So when you talk about the compare and contrast, you have to mention the similarity as well as the differences. But in this slide, I will show you the similarity. So the similarity between aerobic respiration and fermentation, we have 5 similarity. First, the breakdown or process of glucose in its conversion to the chemical energy, meaning both of aerobic and fermentation will convert the glucose into the chemical energy. Second, the process begin in the cytoplasm. So it start from the stage is a stage of produce of pyruvate is occur in the cytoplasm. What is the name of process? Glycolysis process. Third, occur in yeast, bacteria, animal and plant. Or in other hand, we can say it occur in all living things. So the similarity, the next similarity is a produce chemical energy in form of ATP. Meaning both processes is to produce ATP molecule. And last one, the process begin with the hydrolysis process when the glucose is converted to pyruvate. So both aerobic and respiration and fermentation, it is a process where the start from the process of glycolysis to convert the glucose into 2 molecules of pyruvate. Okay, now the differences between these two. Okay, so the differences you have to mention both sides. Okay, how to make the sentence. Okay, aerobic respiration is the breakdown process of molecule is completed in the presence of oxygen, whereas fermentation is the process that breakdown of glucose is incomplete without oxygen or in limited oxygen condition. Okay, second point, aerobic respiration occur in cytoplasm and mitochondria, whereas fermentation process occur in cytoplasm. The aerobic respiration is to produce water, and whereas in the fermentation there is no produce of water. Okay, a fourth point, glucose is oxidized completely into the carbon dioxide and water in aerobic respiration, whereas in the fermentation process, glucose is not oxidized completely into ethanol and carbon dioxide or lactic acid. Fifth point, 1 molecule of glucose generates 2,888 kilojoule of energy, whereas in fermentation, 1 molecule of glucose generates 210 kilojoule in alcohol, and 150 kilojoule in human. So this is a summary of your cellular respiration topic. First, look at the production of energy through the respiration. So this is the main substrate of the production or energy production is glucose. And there we have three types of the cellular respiration. We learn about the aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, and fermentation. So for the anaerobic respiration, is breakdown of glucose in presence of oxygen to produce chemical energy. So it's occur in the mitochondria where the pyruvate oxidation to produce carbon dioxide plus water and energy. Before that, the pyruvate we get from the oxidation process that occur in the cytoplasm. For the fermentation is incomplete breakdown of the glucose in limited oxygen or no oxygen at all. So we learn about two things is in the fermentation. Alcohol fermentation, which is we learn about in the yeast and in the paddy log, right? Paddy plant, and acid lactic fermentation in the human mantle. Okay. So please answer this question in practice book text page 1, 2, 3, number 1 and number 6 only. So for number 7, there is the experiment. They wanted you to answer why energy is required in the metabolic processes actually to maintain our temperature at 37 degree as well as for our growing and development of cell. So B, compare the aerobic respiration with fermentation. So the similarity I already give you, and the differences already explained to you. So question C, microorganisms such as yeast and bacteria usually play the important role in the fermentation process to produce food. Explain why yogurt can spoil if it's not kept in the refrigerator. So you can explain if the milk is kept in the refrigerator, so the low temperature will control the activity or slow down activity of the bacteria to prevent the spoiling of the milk. But if you keep in the room temperature, the bacteria will actively oxidize the milk sugar, so it will spoil the milk. So for the question of enrichment question, I'm not going to read the question, but I want to highlight the point. How do high performance athletes overcome the problem of lactic acid accumulation? Okay, for your information, for the people who very rare exercise, so they experience the muscle cramp because they have a less number of mitochondria in their cell. So what happens? So there is the accumulation of the lactic acid. But for the athlete, they are normally they are undergoes training consistently, so they are able to produce more mitochondrial cell in their cell. Mitochondrial organelle in their cells. So this high number of mitochondria can help the athlete cellular respiration to faster take up of uptake of the oxygen and oxidize the lactic acid. So it will reduce the cell cramp. Okay. So next question. Intake of sodium bicarbonate to increase the muscle efficiency. So they said that our intake of sodium bicarbonate able to increase the muscle efficiency. Why? Because the high pH of the sodium bicarbonate able to naturalize the acid. Okay, that means bicarbonate is alkaline, so it's able to naturalize the lactic acid. Okay, so they increase the efficiency of the muscle. Okay, and another question. So this one, the girl first they keep the yeast in covered container. The yeast will slowly break down the glucose in the grape. But however, if the container does not contain any oxygen, the yeast break down very fast. At the end of the experiment, she found that the rate of the breakdown of glucose became very slow again. So why? Actually, to explain it, when when the container have the oxygen, so this yeast will undergoes the aerobic respiration, meaning they did not produce any ethanol. However, when the lack of the oxygen, the the yeast will respire anaerobically, so or fermentation is will produce ethanol. Okay, so the energy produced be little, but the yeast has break down the glucose faster and provides sufficient energy. The fast rate of glucose breakdown causes the increased rate of the ethanol produced. Okay, so the rate of breakdown increase the high level of alcohol accumulated is toxic and can be inhibit yeast growth. So when at the end of the experiment, why is slow? Because the accumulation of the alcohol become toxic to the yeast, so the yeast will be slowed down or maybe die. Okay, another question, last question. Okay, the girl try to mix the yeast with the plain flour, and the bread did not rise up. Why? It's because warm water. Suppose she have to add the warm water into the dry yeast to make sure the yeast able to activate the dry yeast. Okay, so the activate of the dry yeast undergoes respiration, so that it will produce carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide will expand the bread. Okay, so this girl they have problem because it just adding the plain flour, so that's why the bread is not rice. Okay, thank you. That's all for today. Thank you.